is 5 minutes after. These sessions are recorded, so whoever doesn't make it can still enjoy this. Glad you two are here. As always, thank you for so much for being here. Before we start, um, I did have some zines, some zine sheets I didn't fold and print yet that I wanted to share with you, just since it's just us. So let me turn this camera on. And so I made two more designs. One of them is the Panther Party's 10-point platform, front and back.
Mm,
These are misprinted, but they have all 10 of the points of the platform on
sweet.
here, and the one big QR code for the website, for the actual thing. And then I made a farmers market zine for the Bay Area, and I'm hoping to make some for our chapters as well for their local area.
Mm,
So it's not just the Bay Area. So we have maps with pins on which markets are available, and now there's another back page for just us. So that's a staple back page that we can use that has this strike card and the welcome packet on it. More farms and QR codes, but you can see right there, farmers market, fresh food, locally grown, handpicked for
oh,
you,
I love it.
for the Bay. But then
Yeah.
we could do some for Detroit as well. We could do one for Texas, SoCal. But this is just an example of a farmers market scene so that we can start, of course, going back into our local economy and local foods instead of having to rely on Safeway, Walmart's, big box stores for our groceries. And I actually did make
Mm,
a third one, so not two but three. Another memes on zines, just more memes, more zines for
yeah.
memes. And so those are the
Keep
three
that
designs I
going.
wanted to share. These will be up on the shop, so I'll do another stink about these, and then I'll make another one so we have a good collection of designs. But I wanted to start it off with that. Keep within our presence that we still have these as an option for spreading education as well. And I was thinking of turning
Mm.
some of these classes or these discussions into zines for us to use. So now that's out of the way, I guess I'll keep this on for the app. But I didn't have too much. Just like every week, we play it by ear and we do everything off dome.
Right.
So
For the most.
for the most part, the notes are just there as a guideline. I usually just yap off dome, principled, of course. I'm not just yapping your ear just to yap. We obviously have a method. There's an analysis that goes into these thoughts and to the yap that I do, and everything comes from a materialist point of view. And then we extract all meanings from our observations, which exists in our material conditions. So I just have, for the first part, patience and the socialist motive. So, what motivates a socialist? I would say the existing material conditions. A socialist is an individual who understands their material conditions, understands that these conditions are the way they are. They're just here, and we analyze them as such, and so that we can better understand how our conditions exist, how they be, instead of relying on some notion of devout observances, religion, or a church to tell us that the universe is the way it is, a particular way, and it ought to be a specific way. Everything has their place and whatnot, and we must assume that these things are the way they are because the way they are. Obviously, the
Mm.
socialist, the Marxist, any dialectic materialist, an individual who has an understanding of their conditions, understands that, well, I don't see a God. Doesn't mean that there isn't one, but there's no proof to prove that there is one. So we keep that question in mind. We're not completely disregarding it, but we're not completely entering it into our schemes either. So we're not fully accepting it, we're not fully denying. There's not quite the material conditions to say. Now you could say that there doesn't exist one, with the material evidence provided. You could say that, and I would err on the side of that uh, justification, anyways. But as the materialist, as the dialectic understands, contradictions make the world. These opposing contradictions of what you see and what you don't, of what exists and what you thought would exist, all clash with another. And one of these clashes is a sophisticated notion, it's Karl Marx, the class struggle. Sorry, classes, groups of individuals, or groups of particular interests that are against one another. So in our modern day classes, there's two, and there's always are two oppositional forces, which then are broken down into detachments, but doesn't remove it from the original class. So the vanguard party of the working class is a detachment, but not a completely separate entity. The vanguard party still exists within the working class, but as a class conscious detachment, whereas a
Mhm.
bourgeois example, um, the leisure class. So when we talk about the leisure class in Thornstein Veblen, or just another Marxist theorist, um, when we talk about the leisure class holds non-industrious capital, meaning entertainment, superstructure capital. Um, you're basically it's inherited as well. It's not industrious or factory, traditional bourgeois capital, and where you actually think of a factory, labor, materials, land, resources, so like landlord and stuff. The bourgeois
Mhm.
has a detachment. The leisure class, individuals who quite literally do not do anything, but still get paid and reap what they do not sow. So think of these individuals as the stock investors, stock market people. Think of these people as landlords. Landlords are part of the leisure class. This is a detachment of the bourgeois class, which all hold capital, but the leisure class especially does not do anything. And if anything, they make it harder for other people, us working class, to do anything because of the capital they hold. So just because there
Mhm.
exists detachments in these classes, bourgeois, proletariat, working class, doesn't mean they're separate entities. We would still, in nicer words, lynch, hang landlords, right? Just
Mhm.
because they're not specifically bourgeois, they're leisurely, they don't particularly do much, but they're still in the same denomination of capital owning, which exists antithetical to the proletariat, who can only sell their labor in the market to gain their subsistence. Right? The proletariat class, as Engels had written out in the Principles of Communism, the proletariat is a working class who sole existence needs to sell their labor to gain subsistence. So the individual needs to go up to an enterprise or a company and ask them, "Hey, do you have any positions open so I can sell my labor, so I can make money, so I don't die?" That's basically how every single transaction works when going into the job market. It feels like from the individual's perspective, because the individual always is in a state of becoming. And in this state of becoming, you have the individual aspiring to be. And when the individual aspires to be, the individual exists as if they are on their own journey. Individualism, they're on their own journey, doing whatever they need to do in order for them to succeed in the system, or as whatever the individual has been told to succeed. Hello. And so we understand that individuals in the system are born in throw. They're just here. Doesn't matter if you're born poor, if you're born rich, if you were born some other which way, doesn't matter. You are born here. You are here. But of course, in this system, where and when, specifically, and what you are born in, determines a lot about your life, even before you had any chance of, making a difference in it. As you are born here already, your life's already been decided. And so we talk about this free system and this free nonsense. Do we truly live in a free system in a free country? Debatable. I wouldn't think so, because we basically live in a caste system, a class system in our society. If you're born down here, it's gonna be way harder if you climb up here. But if you're already up here, you already made it. Like you don't need to worry about a lot up here in the privileged parts of society. But if you're all the way down here, you kind of have to work hard, pull your bootstraps up, and really make it work for yourself. That's pretty much what we've been told. But when it comes to the socialist motive and the patience that we discussed in the beginning, um, the patience part comes from the discussion I was having that works against the capitalist motive. So in socialism, it's all about patience because we understand that socialism is a natural progression to a society, as socialism will progress outwards into a communism, or as feudalism has progressed
Mhm.
into a capitalism, and then primitive communism has progressed into a feudalism. So all of this progresses and emerges from the contradictions within itself out and materializes from those contradictions. So we can theorize all that we want about what will socialism look like, but it will emerge from the contradictions at which we experience right now because we are in the capitalist mode of production. And in this capitalist mode of production, we are experiencing contradictions back to back to back to back. But as the capitalists back then in feudal times have been seeing contradictions in their mode of production, feudalism, contradictions, back to back to back to back. Why does the king rule? Why is the king here? Why do we have to give everything to the king? And so we're having the same conversations, but we just don't call them kings. We call them, why is the boss everything? Why is the CEO everything? Why are these shareholders everything? And then, of course, in the socialist mode of production, communists and anarchists will look at the socialists. Why does, I don't want to say the workers. Oh yeah, the workers have everything because it'd be a dictatorship of the proletariat. So why does the workers have everything? Why does it can be everyone? So that's where you get common property out of communism. It's eventually the evolution and the emerging of these contradictions coming up from our many so interactions. And so I have a little bit of supportive theory, not quite like a really on the nail, but the reason why it we emerge out of these processes is because of our growing population. Our growing population, as we are so many in numbers, expose these contradictions, expose these interactions. Because individuals, us, very unique people, we get to do whatever you want, fart around, do whatever. But in our farting around, we get to interact with each other. In our various interactions, because of our existing material conditions, whether someone be on the East Coast or the West Coast, or someone will be all the way over in Europe, in Asia, or wherever. All of the cultures, and all the particulars, and all of the conditions at which endow the individual when they are born, all makes the individual, and then they go out exposing and finding contradictions. Even though the individual may not understand them to be contradictions up front, they understand that there is something there, and it is the articulation of which that helps them get them there. So not all the time does individuals have an understanding of what the contradiction exists in front of them, but the individual understands that there is something there. And so throughout time, people have been articulating these thoughts. People have been articulating these ideas and themes. We get our material sciences, our philosophies, our questioning. Humans, us, are naturally inquisitive creatures. We inquire about a lot of things. We question, and in our questioning, we understand because we reason. If this happens, if X Y Z or X plus Y equals Z, and so there's a string like a formula, or there's something concrete. There is a method at which the individual understands life through. I call it the human inquisition, just how an individual understands and exists in their material conditions. But this method is not so bulletproof when it comes to propaganda, indoctrination, because the individual exists. What else would you believe if you were only told your entire life, do it this way, and then this outcome will appear. And then you see individuals in your lifetime doing exactly that. They do X plus Y ends up with Z. If you see a lot of successful people going to college, you too yourself will go to college. It's a no brainer. You see other people do it, they're successful, you do it, you'll be successful. And that's the lie that we've been told. The X plus Y equals Z formula, at least for the bourgeois institution, has all been kind of a front, a lie, a method for the bourgeois class to extract as much labor and surplus value out of the working class. So when we talk about our bourgeois schemes and we talk about our lifestyles, it's all layered and coded with this understanding that individuals just are. We just are here, not so reactionary, but reactive to our environment. We react to things. Like we wouldn't do anything if there wasn't stuff imposing onto us. And the most natural restrictions and material limitations of that is just living. People need water, people need food, people need a roof, people need a lot of things to keep living. Otherwise, you would have croaked over many years ago, died of starvation or water. And unfortunately, it happens all the time. Even right now, in our very futuristic society, it happens all the time. People are starving. People are dying of malnourishment. People don't have houses or roofs over their head to protect them from the weather and the elements. It happens every single day. So we talk about it as if it was like something way in the past, where it's like, oh, we've solved all that poverty. But of course, as we analyze our material conditions just a little bit further, it's very much a reality for many people, even living in this first world country. Even living in here, have people in this tech dominated space. I live in the Bay Area, just tents out in the streets, in the freeways. It's horrible to see it. It hurts, and it's no help that our policies are making it worse. Thanks, California. But we're not here to discuss the policies of California. We're here to discuss the actual material conditions of why this stuff is happening. And mostly, and I'm here to say, break it all down, it comes down to two things, the two gripes that I'm having a lot of problems with trying to make education more accessible to individuals without having such a big, large vocabulary. Break things down to a fourth grade level that everyone understands, everyone gets it. But I have two problems, and it's two phrases, or it's like two notions: anti-intellectualism and alienation. And I found that these two go well together in explaining how an individual growing up in society, especially the bourgeois society and our imperialist society, can be detached and removed from not just the understanding but the curiosity of new knowledge then presented to the individual. So you'll always see individuals and people reject, don't worry about that. That's not like, that won't make me money. Or, that have to worry about that. That won't give me the bag. People are always hooked on this money thing, which is only one part of the problem. But I specifically introduced anti-intellectualism and alienation because anti-intellectualism is that first step. It's that rejection of knowledge. And it's not the entire rejection of knowledge. Some people are inquisitive naturally, we all are, but not to the extent where you're not going to seek everything out in question. You're only going to be specific things. And if those specific things don't align with what you want to learn, then you're not going to be getting any of that. So let's say a Joe Schmo communist comes up to an individual, hey, you want to learn about communism? Well, the indoctrination period at that point has drilled in, well, Red Scare, has drilled in anti-communist propaganda. And so you can't just throw in those big words. But if you do start off with, hey, wouldn't you like to get paid more at work? Well, and all of a sudden you have common ground. It's because these ideas are pretty generally universal. But at the moment you start putting labels on these, the anti-intellectualism kicks in. No, I've been told that was a bad thing. I don't want to learn about that. There are better alternatives. Communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. Um, and then you could say, oh, capitalism doesn't work either. But then you get into an argument. And we're not here for arguments. Anti-intellectualism is that first hurdle I'm trying to articulate over, trying to get over how to get an individual back into this scheme of inquisition, this scheme of wanting just to know a little bit more, but specifically about the individual's material conditions. And the second part, alienation, is the removal, the actual physical removal of the material, of the conditions, or all the schemes that allow for the individual to learn. So I see it a lot in my little brother. He's in high school, he's a sophomore. And so alienation, as I have been drilling into his brain, socialism, Marxism, just basic general understandings and how to think, observe your material conditions, analyze it, then form an opinion, versus seeing it, then forming opinion. So the dialectics thinking, I've been really getting into it. But he tells me every now and then, like every couple of days, alienation, anti-intellectualism, it's present, it's rampant inside of our schools and education system. And that's pretty much where the crux of our revolution lies. It's the youth, or it's basically just education in general. It's how an individual learns. So when it comes to alienation in our spaces, the alienation we see in schools is the individual does not want to be at school. So they mentally remove themselves, but they're forced to physically be there. So the individual, the high schooler in this sense, goes to a place where one, they don't want to be there, two, not interested in what they're being taught and learn, right? What they're trying to learn. And three, um, I guess I lied, there's no third point. It's just the first two. So, but the alienation comes from that lack of, first, that anti-intellectualism, comes from a lack of desiring to knowledge. Alienation is just further removing and stripping away the individual from that process of learning. And so I found that individuals like to learn. It's just what happens when you force people to learn, it's not fun. It's not fun when you're forced to learn, especially about topic and subjects that are not particularly interesting, even though they might be needed, like basic algebra, arithmetic, English, the breaking down of words or etymology, some stuff like that. But when it comes to forcing an individual to learn about basically borderline pre-calculus, when the individual is not of a mathematician background, there is some superfluous knowledge that is embedded, or yeah, there is definitely superfluous knowledge embedded in the individual in the education system. But there's a certain threshold, and the U.S. education system past that goes beyond, and then we brand it imperialism and indoctrination, and we see it out everywhere. The reactionary scheme, the individual coming from this institution, this bourgeois education institution, goes out and reacts and becomes reactionary. So when you try to talk to someone about this communism or this weird idea of socialism, you're always met with a wall. So always using those labels and those names, at least for me, I found out always never works. You always talk about wouldn't you want to get paid more? Wouldn't you want to like own a house someday? All these crazy ideas, getting paid more and owning a house. Wouldn't it be crazy to not go hungry one night? It's a crazy idea nowadays. To me, it's crazy to think that it's crazy, but that's what some people think. It is crazy that some people and some individuals deserve and don't deserve houses, deserve and don't deserve food. It's ridiculous. But I found that both the two notions, anti intellectualism and alienation, both the removal of the desire to learn and the literal removal of the individual's space, like their mental capacity, from those spaces of learning, two important like stabs or stakes that we need to address and need to understand how it works within our schemes, because it's not just one particular field that is intellectual, anti-intellectual. It is the entire US hegemonic being, its imperial society, that forces onto the individual to become anti-intellectual, to become alienated from the processes of learning. And when we understand alienation from the production side, it works the same way. The individual is alienated from the products of their labor. The individual is removed from the surplus value, both physically, almost mentally as well, because then it's not, oh, I don't own that. That's the company's. Even though I made that chair with my hands, with the resources provided, my labor made the chair, it's not mine because the company said it wasn't mine. So the alienation begins in production as such. And then in the forms of education, alienation begins when the individual checks out. When the individual's like, you know what, this is not cool, not swag. I'm not really feeling it. And so I'm just going to mentally check out while the individual passively consumes this information. So a couple of weeks ago, we went over my little brother's history classwork and the worksheets that I provided. And there was all the sorts of imperialism with definitions, social Darwinism. I thought that wasn't a thing anymore, but apparently it's full force. Individuals and high schoolers alike are learning about social Darwinism, where the inherency that people are just better because they are superior, because no other reason beyond than it is quite silly. And that contributes to anti-intellectualism because you remove the further understanding of why that is. Why are some people better, right? Not saying that they are, but why are some people, people are taken for granted where these statements come into their schemes, into their lives, into their minds. And so when they take it for granted, they go out and spew that nonsense as a reactionary being. So when individuals go out and confront policy or they talk about politics, all that nitty gritty, gross nonsense no one talk about, it's all reactionary. It's all what they know, not how they know what to say. They only know what to say, not how to say stuff. So that analysis is kind of one dimensional, maybe two. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Two-dimensional analysis when it comes to the reactionary mode of thought, the scheme embedded within the US education system. So we have our education, anti-intellectualism, alienation, or the faults in our education system contributing to this problem that we see every day. This removal of one's space or one's existence from the conversations that we want to have, right? To want to build community, the individual themselves is already removed from that notion because the individual understands within this capitalist system, it is the one individual, yourself, that must perform, that must be, and that must do all that they can so that they can succeed as one individual in society. It's quite the big responsibility. It's quite a lot of freedom, and it is quite unnecessary how we force one singular peoples out of everyone to do everything themselves. Notice how the systems of capital have brought in so much freedom where the one individual can sustain themselves in such a ways and where a community would have, right, to that same capacity. So one entire community, let's say dozens of people, a few dozens of people, we'll say 36, 3 dozens of people, can provide a lifestyle equivalent to the one person who can manage and live inside of a capitalist system, which the leisures bought, the leisures are bought from exploited labor. Because how else would you be able to have such material conditions, have such experiences, if it were not from the extraction of a surplus that the individual themselves did not procure? And so you get to that exploitation, that grabbing, but it also could not just from the boss's perspective, from the bourgeois perspective, but also from the consumers, the leisurely classes perspective that the individual consumes from exploited labor. So where the individual working an 8 hour day, generally, as the rule of thumb is, the individual can sustain themselves for 4 hours if they work for 4 hours. So, like back then, they would chop some wood, hunt a lamb or hunt a hunt an animal they eat, and then they skin it and whatnot, feed it, and then they're good for like a couple days. It's like 4 hours a day, a whole work day for yourself for a couple days. Now, imagine if the individual worked all day every day, but they had no time for themselves. That time is going somewhere else. It's materialized into profits, it's materialized into money, into surplus value. But that time hasn't gone anywhere. It's still here with us now. It just, instead of selling yourself under slavery for the whole day, you're selling yourself hourly under capitalism. And that hourly allocation is more than enough to sustain someone's lifestyle, however so extravagant. Like billionaires with their yachts. Yeah, that was about, a couple hundreds of thousands of hours of labor to make that for just the one person. Oh, we'll be generous for the family of that one person to have that giga yacht, to have that big old mansion, to have all of these things, or these material conditions in which the individual desires and wants, and that's where you get your demand. And Thornstein Veblen goes into, just another Marxist philosopher, goes into this law, this observation of conspicuous consumption, making it so obvious that an individual consumes that it actually changes their what is it? Oh, their social status. So their social status is entirely reliant on the individual's ability to consume. And you have to have money or capital in this sense to consume. And so when you have a lot of this capital and you have a lot of this leisure and this consuming, you create this social strata, this hierarchy in the capitalist sense. This and where things must be where they're at, where they have the tiny, small, concentrated elite, have all of the wealth and consumption and means and a lot. And as you trickle down, not a lot of that consumption is found in the same schemes, where individuals of a lower class in society, right, the working and struggling classes of society, don't have such means of consumption. Not everyone has a yacht. I'm pretty sure no one doesn't. Like some people that don't want a yacht, it's too much to handle. There's too much maintenance and all of the logistics aside. Not everyone wants to have a lot of things, but capitalism forces those conditions onto some people. So capitalism forces some people, either by choice or not, to have a yacht, and some people are forced to, by choice or not, to be homeless in this society. It's all done by force. Contradictory to what the founding fathers say, this free country and free in America, it's actually quite forced. Everything is quite for. Everything is done for you, right? You have no choice and say whatever you do in the system. As we said earlier, you exist in a caste system. So if you're born down here, yeah, the only way is up. But if you can't get up, you're stuck down here. But the cool thing is, if you're up here, the only way you can go down. But it's really hard to go down from this position. That's why I want to keep all the power, all of these structures in place that maintain them in their position up here, upholding or using the masses to uphold their position. Yes, up, down. Left and right is a semantics conversation. It's nice and fun to talk about your little policies, left and right. Your right want to hold on to capital and property and such, and the left wants to abolish all of it and stuff. But really, the conversation is up. Who actually materially controls because of the schemes of the institution in our system versus the disenfranchised, the individuals that don't control anything. So you have people on the left and right who both don't control and control capital. Like as a leftist, there are socialists who have businesses. They're not capitalists, they're petite bourgeois, but they have capital. And individuals on the right, petite bourgeois, have capital. And then on the left and right, individuals who don't have capital, workers. So it's not left and right because there exist classes within both the left and the right that are the same. Petite bourgeois, left and right? Property holding, non-property holding, abolish private property or don't. Your left and right issues, up and down. Who gets to control the means of production and the means of having your material conditions? Well, like who owns the Hershey's factory so that they can produce Hershey's for everyone or chocolate at a specific price? And that specific price, bourgeois economics say, determined by the market. Marxist was economics say, of course, that is determined by the bourgeois, by the individuals who own product. Because who else? Imagine this: you wanted a piece of chocolate, and you only knew one chocolate factory owner in the area. They have a whole monopoly on chocolate. So if anyone wanted chocolate, it's on his terms that he can sell his chocolate. He's not valiant or whatever for coming up with this production of chocolate. He's quite the bastard for holding on to that much chocolate for himself. A very selfish, very hoarding kind of guy. We don't really like those people in society. But our society rewards those individuals because it maintains the systems and structures that keep them in power. But the keeping in power is only justified through the false meritocracy. And so the biggest struggle I'm also having with is this false meritocracy. It's people believing that working hard, right? In the general sense, it does. I love when I work hard, sweat a little bit, feel good about it. Working hard feels good. Working hard for a separate interest, private interest, another motive, not so well. We don't like working for another interest that doesn't suit our. We're also just a little bit selfish, but we understand when we're being exploited, and that doesn't feel good. And we don't like being exploited. So we love to labor, we love to work. Contrary to popular belief, people love to work. People love to labor. I love to labor. I'm about to work on my car. I'm about to change brakes and rotors after this. I'm gonna get a little dirty myself. I love to labor, love to work. I just don't. We don't like being exploited. We don't like having our time stolen from us and never reimbursed, reinvested, or given back to some capacity at which we can enjoy ourselves. All of that time and labor is stripped away from us by force because of the institutions of our capitalist system to a private interest. That's why there exist yachts. That's why there exist private jets. That's why there exist these mansions and these high-rise hotels for individuals. It's because all of the labor which was extracted from the entire system globally, not just in the U.S., not just in Europe or in the imperial-controlled Africa, it is globally at which the labor is transferred from all of the bottom, quote unquote, the working classes, to the disenfranchised, to the individuals who must sell their labor to in order to live, because living is nice, to the top, to the individuals at which control production. And so I always say this every now and then, we do it to ourselves. But when I say we, I mean as a species. When I say we as a working class, it's not bourgeois. But when I say we do it to ourselves, it's a species. It's humans, which you could call humans. It's just those people, just like us, doing this to us. So we're doing it to ourselves existentially as a little philosophy. But materially, is what you can see and tell. Those billionaires and corporations, not so much people or demons in human skin. They've taken over. They're like lizard people. That's funny. But we understand that these individuals who own production, right, do not have the same aligning interests as the individuals in the working class. And the individuals of the working class, of course, have an interest in the working class. That's why you call it a dictatorship of the proletariat. It's not a dictatorship of the bourgeois. It's what we have right now. And not a lot of people like it. I'm pretty sure if we went to a dictatorship of the proletariat, more people would like it. I would say around 90, 99% of people would like it. The dictatorship of the proletariat is where the workers have control. It's only the like tiny 1%, generously 1%, 0.01, however small denomination that actually owns the means of production. It actually owns how individuals, walk, talk, shit, scream, and whatever, just function in the society. What the owners decide what the status quo must be in order for them to maintain power, or for the structures to be maintained themselves through the autonomy of the individual just laboring in society, their need and desire to live, so they must sell their labor. We do it to ourselves on all levels. Individuals of the bourgeois class do it to themselves because it's like they're growing a tree, but you chop it way too early. But you still have wood. You could still use the wood. It's just not as much. And the working class do it to themselves to the smallest degree. And the individual must reproduce themselves at work. Of course, not by choice. The individual must produce themselves or reproduce themselves at work to live, to have the paycheck, and that paycheck sustains your material conditions: rent, food, fun activities, having fun times, not so fun times, whatever times, because anything you must do in this society has been normalized because of the breaking down of communities, third spaces, and personal connections with strangers. You have the individual with the paycheck that must sustain everything themselves. So the paycheck gives you the food. The paycheck gives you the house, not your friends or family, your community members. They don't help you with those. If anything, because of what the capitalist mode of production has taught you, they're trying to steal from you. They're trying to get one up on you. Everyone's an enemy. That's the capitalist mode of production. Everyone is an enemy. And I call this, and it boils down to two more things. I know we talked about anti intellectualism and alienation, but both of those things lie under the umbrella of what I call, and I'm very proud of it, it sounds so cool, competition and the schemes of savagery. And savagery is not just some thrown word. Thornstein Veblen described savagery in his Marxist critique against capitalism, so lovely, as the natural, as the animalistic man, capital M's mode of being. It's naturally savage, because how did the individuals of the humans way back then grew up? Around lions and things that'll kill them. No houses. They had food, which was walking, and then it wasn't walking when they ate it. But you had the natural schemes of life, the natural barbaric, savage schemes of life, which formed this primitive communism and this primitive hierarchy. And so this primitive communism, primitive hierarchy evolved. We don't have no communism anymore. Capitalism destroyed that. But the hierarchy part stayed. The hierarchy part from our agrarian evolution, from hunter to gatherer to farming, this hierarchy formed. Whoever owned the farm was the top person, or the person that had a social status and a productive status in their little commune, little society. And so the evolution of hierarchy has brought us to here. In its most sophisticated form, feudalism. That's where we get the most absolute rule of a monarchy and hierarchy. Its most typical form, monarchy, feudalism. And then hierarchy has since devolved just a little bit, not too much, but it's devolved just a little bit. And where individuals, there's not just one single individual who controls everything now. You call them a share, a team, a board of directors, a shareholder team, and whatnot. You call them like this entity, this group, because it's not just one person anymore, but the hierarchy still forms. The hierarchy's still here. And so the evolution of that hierarchy has made us into these competitive and savage beings. The savage comes from that hierarchy, competitiveness, the animalistic, the eat or be eaten, the ought to be, what not to be, the reactionary schemes. And so after pondering about that for a while, for a long time, competition and the schemes of savagery, there's always two parts. Because competition and savagery exist on the same side of this imaginary scale. And then on the other side, another beautiful thing, cooperation and the schemes of harmony. And so it all sounds utopic, harmony or whatnot, but it still falls in within the same um, schemes of savagery. Because, of course, as we know, socialism emerges from capitalism. You wouldn't have a socialism without a capitalism, just like how you wouldn't have a feudalism or a capitalism without a feudalism. These processes emerge out of each other. And so that emerging from the schemes of savagery, I thought, through this wonderful articulation, the schemes of harmony, which is, of course, like the antithesis of savagery. So instead of having hierarchy, so instead of having this competitive modes in being, you intentionally cooperate. Imagine that. People coming together, just being. And this is what the principle, what stood upon, or that founded primitive communism, cooperation, and the schemes of harmony, giving people what they need because they need it, right? Instead of having a mode of production which allows individuals to be free in this liberal society, to hoard and keep whatever they had because they want it, and disbar any other existence from imposing upon your stuff because it's yours. You are free to have that. Like this resource hoarding is a part of that competitive scheme. It helps the individual who has all this stuff to keep it for themselves, but if anyone else were to get some of that, it would hinder their chances of survival or success or whatnot. So individuals dispar competitively, inherently so, because of our system, from touching each other's resources because that's mine. It's all within the my scheme. I think that's competition at its most fundamental level. The misuse, I would say, of individualism. It is that individualism used wrong where the individual finds themselves in such schemes, in such, I, this is mine, that's yours, don't touch my stuff, and I won't touch your stuff. Very separationist. There's a few separationist feminist movements that I've heard, the E4 movement. I don't want to say too much, but I have some comrades on TikTok and social medias were calling it a separationist movement. At first I thought it was great because patriarchy bad, down with the patriarchy, men in power. Like, what is that? It should be everyone in power. Everyone should become their own dictator at some point. I kid. But the patriarchy from the 4B movement, they're trying to tear it down, woo woo, until comrades and I found out that the 4B movement is separationist because men, well, naturally couldn't join the B4, the 4B movement because it was a strictly a women's only movement, which is fine, which is great. But to have a lack of intercommunal or open borders and ideologically to the movement, it hinders its ability to grow. As because if it's strictly women for a women's only, it's fine. Tearing down the patriarchy, that's fine. But to openly denounce all of the, that's like saying petite bourgeois are just as bad as the bourgeois members. There's certain degrees to this, right? The petite bourgeois just has some capital, but not enough to sustain themselves. They're still very much working class. So like they're like detachment of the working class. They're also a detachment of the bourgeois. It's like a mix. It's like a little fine line. It's where the small business owner makes a leap of faith. Do I stay with the working class? Like, do I keep providing my labor to the community or society without having this automatic sustenance of material conditions from my capital? Or do I go ahead and make that jump into management and finance capital to make my lifestyle autonomous basically? And there's that fine line, right? So in the 4B movement, the line was crossed. It's the disbarment completely of men in their movement. No, no harm to me. I understand that patriarchy is a bad thing. Raw, down with the patriarchy. Patriarchy is bad because men in power is bad. And I understand well as a man myself, as a dude, I cannot be a part of that liberation of women because I am not a woman. I can't do just like how was it Marx? The proletariats of each nation within like their own nation, their borders, must commit to the revolution in their material conditions. It's like saying, as a man, I can't go into the women's movement and liberate women, just like how women can't liberate men in a matriarchal sense or in a working class sense. Bourgeois cannot, or in a racial sense as well. White people cannot free or liberate black people from their struggles. It's the same principle, the same concept, but we must be supportive. We must understand that these existence and these conditions and these problems, these issues exist among us, and they exist. So we're into everything is almost intersectional. We're a what's the example I used? It was like a disenfranchised individual can be both petite bourgeois and a part of the patriarchy, but they are still oppressed by the bourgeois classes, like the dominant bourgeois classes. So individuals have intersectional identities, which constitutes them to be part of a specific movement or a detachment of a particular liberation. But that doesn't mean we should halt and stop our support. Of course, if the support aligns bourgeois, which is separationist, because in the competition and the schemes of savagery, you have separating themes. Things must be in their places. It must be this way, and it must be this way. Like you're cutting and shooting off to the side. You see a whole idea and a concept, cut it up, move section off to the side, because you're separating. It's separationist to exclude other individuals from participating in that. And it's extremely exclusive to some of these movements because if you're not a particular identity, and it's almost hostile, these individuals will come out to you like liberals, like the liberal mindset, the mode of thought, like a reactionary mode of thought, where it's like if you're not of a particular certain way, we don't want you. Very scary. But as of course, as we understand, it's dialectics. We understand that these problems exist intersectionally, and there only exist two problems, or the two sides, up and down, right? All of our problems exist within this sphere of up and down. It's just how close are you to the middle, the center, to reach and go beyond that point of up, or to reach that point of that down, that working class alignment, or that bourgeois class, the ruling class alignment. So if is your movement separationist, it's probably bourgeois aligning because the markets established and appropriated by bourgeois are all separated. They're colonized and imperialized, but they're separated. So I don't know if you've seen the maps of Native American land, Turtle Island here, 17, 1800s, versus what is happening in Palestine in the map now. It looks almost one to one, just like the scale's different. Like if Palestine was, I don't want to say blown up, sorry, enlarging to the scale, it would look these little small pockets of land that are given to the Palestinians, but they're separated. And so that separation different disenfranchises power because it removes the unity, removes almost the solidarity as well, physically. right? Not mentally. Mentally strong solidarity forever, but physically now there's a separation in those lots. So when it comes to Native Americans as well, even on both fronts, the U.S. American imperialism, the current one, being embedded by, is not real. Technological advancements are used in justification of this horrid acts. It's because they are social Darwinism better. It's because they are inherently better that they have these technologies and they have these avenues and these abilities and this freedom to do so. Don't forget that. It is the freedom to do so that the individual must commit to these actions because they're free, because they can do that in this society. They are allowed to, and it's been bonus points if you're a white man as well doing it. So that's like the stereotype there. But I just looked at the time. We're almost done. So I'll yap just for a little bit longer. But I am had a little bit more notes to go over. So I'm going to do a little recap, and then we're going to go over the last 10 minutes over one more topic. So we started off with I didn't get into patience, but the socialist motive. What an individual is motivated by in this society, how an individual exists in this society, in this bourgeois society, no less, right? Against what the individual must think, first observe, analyze, then form an opinion, versus just looking at it and then forming an opinion, like reactionary schemes. Anti-intellectualism and alienation, like how our labor in the production side is alienated from the worker. The individual does not own or take home their labors and their works. They have nothing to show for their sweat, blood, and tears after a hard day's work. And then anti intellectualism, the removal of the individual from that process of thinking, like the rejection of knowledge in general, which contributes to this entire process of socialism bad, communism bad, capitalism good. So we fast forward back to now. What makes a communist? I have just a note right now. So what makes a communist? A lot makes communists, but you can look up on the Frederick Engels made a principles to communism. But what makes a communist is, and it's a mouthful, the doctrine of the conditions of the liberation of the working class. So a whole mouthful. So that's what denotes a communist, just to set the record straight. So most individuals would go out and say, "You're a communist, so you want what is a moneyless, classless, stateless society?" Eventually, I mean, yeah, that'd be nice, but we're not even going to get to the moneyless part, or the stateless part, or the classless part anytime soon. So as a communist, you were working towards those goals. And who was it? I think it was Day quoted someone. Forgive me. But I was also looking at Angela Davis quotes as well. And of course, there's a huge consensus. Revolution is not an act, it's a process. A revolution is a thing that you commit to over a long period of time, almost a lifetime, actually. And so it's not something that people just do for a day. Picket fence. It's not something people just do for an hour, chanting, "I want more money." Well, I want more money too, in the form of a livable wage. But striking and picket fencing, kind of not the way to go about it. It is encouraged, and as I've been saying a while ago, I don't think I said it on here, but boycotts are effective sometimes. Rarely are they effective because basically what the individual is committing under a boycott, so the communist understands, is that you're basically just moving money, moving your liquid capital from one enterprise in the system to another. So it doesn't matter if it's small business because small business and petit bourgeois still work under the profit motive. And so they're still cycling through, and depending on the logistics of that company, are still touching bases with enterprises and profit motive businesses because of how products are shifted, created, and made in our society. A lot of parts coming in and out, and outsourcing and whatnot. So you're going to run into an enterprise for profit motive. So when you boycott, you're basically just moving your money not from this one enterprise, but to another within the system. So instead of looking this way, having your attention this way, now you have your attention this way in the same system that exploits you and disenfranchises the individual. So boycotts work sometimes, rarely, if they ever have. But a general strike, though, now hold on now, you may be cooking there for the general strike. Because a boycott is just abstaining from a particular entity. A general strike is an abstaining from the entire system as a whole to the capacity in which the individual can produce. So not everyone can just, "I'm done, quitting my job, and then join a general strike." It's not how it works. right? Individuals still need to work, and we will still need individuals to work in socialism. So we're not calling for a ban of work altogether. We're calling for equal measures, livable wages, houses for people, food, for crying out loud. But the general strike is that embodiment, is that process that we must commit to. And as revolutionaries, it is a lifelong process because it wouldn't be a process if it wasn't lifelong, at least for the revolutionary sense. Hugh Newton's revolutionary suicide. If you're a revolutionary for life. You must commit yourself to life to be a revolutionary. So that's what I'm doing here. That's what we're all doing here. We're almost at that time, 5 minutes till, and I have to find a socket, specific socket for the job I need to do. So I'll cut it a little short right now. I will be heading out. I'll have my uh, camera on for a little bit. Hard stop at 5 o'clock. So if you have any questions, type them up. Session is recorded. This one will be going up this week. I still have to upload and record another session for another session that was cut in half. But this will be going up, and then we'll be getting onto a regular schedule. And I think I'll keep the face cam on. That was a nice addition. So thank you so much for being here. It's a little short today, but next week will be full force. I'll actually have some notes, and I'll have these. I'll have more of these printed up, distributed, and then we could talk more about those and that plan in next week's discussion. So if you have any questions, yap it out. If not, thank you so much for being here. I'll stay here till 5. I have some fries in front of me I want to eat. So thank you so much. Love you all. Free the working class, liberation, and whatnot.
Oh, sorry, this is kind of not exactly related to the talk, but I was just thinking about doing my own education. I'm working on doing an abolition teaching.
Yes, yes, comrade. Go for it. Or were you gonna hold it here or in another server or like on a Zoom meeting?
Oh, I was gonna do it in person, but I was thinking about kind of running through it online first and doing some different things. So,
Yeah, you set up a class whenever. Just let people know, of course. And
mm,
then yeah, just let us know. We'll let people know, attend it. But if you want to start one in person, that's great. But I'm glad you're showing the initiative to do so, which is fun. Which is fun.
yeah, I'm kind of new to this. I don't know. I have so many books I need to read.
Oh, I have a whole stack of books right here, and it's looking at me all ominous.
I have a long list, and it's just like, oh God, I cannot read 50 books at once.
No, it's overwhelming. So I usually I have a stack right here, but I have a whole list of PDFs on my phone or on the laptop. It's just a long list, and then the physical media, and I'm not touching any of it, unfortunately.
Oh, I try to get it. I feel like just like reading online for a long time, it kind of like, I don't know, it gets hard with like my eyes and stuff. So I try to get it through my library. I'm in college though, so I mean, I can access a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah, the eyes are a big thing because I don't want to sit here, my retina's burning, reading 50 pages of Marx
yeah,
just telling people, hey guys, maybe capitalism is the problem. Yeah, just 50 pages of Lenin telling you that, you know what is to be done? Fucking revolution, violent revolution. I'm like, wow, just 100 pages of straight, just do a violent revolution methodically. This is like my type of reading. But on screen though, it's 100 pages of, whew, eyes burn.
yeah, I need, I don't know if this would be helpful. I could maybe put this in resources, but I also have, I actually got this from a different server, but there's like a riot medicine PDF I've been going through slowly. Has
Right
a
on, you can
bunch
drop
of
that
stuff.
in the media, maybe, general, wherever. We'll
Yeah,
find it.
I'll try. I need to figure out how to upload it. But yeah, I've been slowly going through it. They go really in depth. I'm like, I'm definitely not. Because it was written by like a paramedic and stuff. So,
Mhm.
but it's definitely useful because I'm trying to do some first aid and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do everything they say to because it's really in depth, but I can do some things.
Right on. Baby steps, small things at a time. It took me 5 minutes to come up with this front. This is a zine. This is a zine sheet. I didn't fold these yet, But we have memes on zines, and I actually put effort into the title or the front card of one of them. I had brain fart. So I just made this little quick one. I think it looks great. I think this will do great. I think people will love it.
Nice. Where are you located geographically?
Bay Area, Fremont, California.
I see. No, I'm in California too, but not really Bay Area, so not too far.
You
I
up or
kind of have
down?
yeah,
Like Sacramento or down Bakersfield that way?
oh down.
Down.
But I kind of have two areas I'm in because I'm from the Central Valley, but I'm not going to school there, so it's also like I've been doing some more stuff
Central
around
SoCal.
school because that's where I'm from. That's where I'm mostly at.
Right on. Would you look at the time? I gotta start slaving now on my vehicular. Um, I'll wait for our to stop typing. But thank you so much for joining. Love your question conversation afterwards. Have a good one.
Mhm.
Enjoy your time. We'll be here next week, every week, unless I say so, because last week I had to go to a family thing. But every week from now on, unless I say so, we'll be here at the same time. And these sessions are recorded. So they'll be popping up. And if you're watching it online, thank you for the support.
Um, yeah, because once January starts and I go back to school, I am very busy on Wednesdays. So
Mm. That's why these are recorded. And we can also shift the
yeah.
times on these, but this will always be a resource for everyone. Love the yap, the political yap. And I love the conversations that we have with everyone.
Okay, thank you, comrade. Have a good one.
Thanks, Conrad. Have a good day.